I knew I should have stopped walking the moment I heard the growl. It wasn't a normal dog sound. It was deep and sharp, like metal twisting under pressure. I froze in the mansion hallway, my arms full of clean linens, trying to remember the rules the head housekeeper had rushed through only minutes ago. Never ask questions about the blood on Dorian Kane's shirts. Never step into the East Wing after midnight. And never go near the dog named Brutus. I learned that last rule 40 seconds too late. The steel door in front of me shook, like something huge was throwing itself against it. I felt the vibration in my ribs. Margot, the senior maid training me, grabbed my arm with a force that almost bruised. "That's the boss's dog," she whispered. "Cost him 200,000 at some underground auction. That thing lives for violence. Do not go near that door." The crashing stopped. Silence filled the hallway, the kind that made your skin tighten. It felt like something on the other side was listening. That was when I heard it. 3 quick breaths. A pause. 1 long exhale, ending in a soft whine. My whole body went numb. The sheets slid out of my hands and scattered across the polished floor. My throat closed, as memories I had buried for 7 years came rushing back all at once. I knew that sound. I had heard it every night when he was a puppy. I had held him while he made that same little whine whenever thunderstorms scared him, or when he wanted to crawl closer in our tiny apartment. Brutus. My Brutus. "What are you doing?" Margot hissed, but her voice felt far away now. My feet moved without permission. My hand touched the steel handle even though I knew I shouldn't, even though I knew this dog had attacked trainers, handlers, and anyone who dared step close. But I also knew that breathing pattern. It wasn't just familiar. It was part of me. My fingers shook as I unlocked the door. Margot gasped behind me, shouting for security, but the click of the lock echoed through my bones like something final. Like I was stepping back into a past I thought I had lost forever. The door swung open. The room looked like a prison cell built for a monster. Reinforced walls, scratches dug deep into expensive wood, heavy chains bolted to the floor. And in the center of it all stood a massive Rottweiler, bigger than any I had ever seen, muscles carved like stone, scars crossing his shoulders like battle marks. He snapped his head toward me. My breath caught in my chest. His teeth were bared, ready to kill. His entire body was coiled in aggression. But then I saw it. A tiny scar above his left eye. A scar from when he was 8 weeks old and bumped into our coffee table. I had held him through those 3 stitches while my mom hummed to calm both of us down. My knees almost gave out. "Brutus," I whispered. His snarl faltered. His huge head tilted, confused. His ears twitched forward. Behind me, footsteps thundered. Security, Margot yelling. Someone shouting for me to get out, but everything around me faded. All I could see was the dog I had cried for, prayed for, searched for, until my mother's illness made everything else disappear. My voice came out broken as I sank slowly to my knees. "It's me," I whispered. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm right here." I began humming the lullaby my mother used to sing, the same one Brutus always calmed to as a baby. The Irish melody trembled out of me, sharp with old grief, but the sound was enough. Brutus froze. His ears lifted. His breathing changed. The violent tension in his muscles melted in slow waves. His chain drooped as he lowered himself cautiously, inch by inch, toward me. Someone shouted, "Step away from the dog right now!" The voice carried authority that filled the entire room. I didn't need to turn to know whose it was. Dorian Kane. The Mafia boss who owned this mansion and apparently owned Brutus now. But I couldn't stop. Couldn't break eye contact with the dog crawling toward me like he couldn't believe I was real. 2 feet away now. 1 foot. His nose touched my palm. A shock went through me so hard I almost sobbed. Tears blurred my vision as I stroked the familiar scar above his left eye. His huge body leaned into my touch, trembling with something that felt like relief. A soft rumble rose from his chest. Not a growl, but something closer to a memory. "That's impossible," Dorian said behind me, his voice lower now. He tried to kill the last man who got near him. I finally looked up. Dorian Kane was tall, sharp-jawed and impossibly dangerous-looking. Dark hair, darker eyes, a man carved from confidence and violence. But now he stared at me, like he was witnessing something he didn't have a name for. "Who are you?" he asked. I swallowed, brushing my fingers along Brutus's cheek as he pressed against me like he never wanted me to disappear again. "My name is Isa Brennan," I said softly. "And this is my dog." Dorian's expression shifted. Shock, confusion, something else I couldn't read. Brutus's tail thumped once against the floor. And just like that, my quiet job as a maid in a Mafia mansion became something else entirely. Something dangerous. Something life-changing. Something that would pull me into Dorian Kane's world in ways I never expected. Brutus stayed pressed against my leg the whole walk upstairs, as if afraid I might vanish again. His massive head kept nudging my hip, and every time he did, a fresh wave of emotion hit me so hard I could barely breathe. I hadn't touched him in 7 years. Now he was glued to me like not a single day had passed. Dorian Kane walked ahead of us, silent and unreadable. His steps were precise, controlled, the way a man moves when he's used to being obeyed without question. His broad shoulders were tense beneath his dark shirt, and even though he didn't look back once, I could feel his focus locked on every small movement behind him. When we reached his office, he pushed the door open and stepped aside. "In," he said. It wasn't a threat. It also wasn't a request. I walked in with Brutus, leaning heavily against my leg. Dorian closed the door behind us with a soft click that somehow sounded more dangerous than the slamming steel door downstairs. His office looked like something out of a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, dark wood, cold steel, and an expensive rug Brutus immediately plopped onto like he owned the place. I sat in the leather chair across from Dorian's desk. Brutus rested his head on my knee with a deep huff that made my chest tighten with love and heartbreak. "You have 5 minutes," Dorian said, leaning on the front of his desk with crossed arms. "Explain how an animal I couldn't control for 3 years walks straight to you like a lost child who found its mother." The words hit harder than I expected. My voice came out small at first. "I didn't tame him today," I said. "I raised him." Dorian's brows lifted slightly, the first crack in his icy expression. So I told him. I told him about the shelter where I found Brutus at 8 weeks old, the nights I sang him to sleep during thunderstorms. The morning I woke up to an empty balcony and a cut lock. The flyers I put up around South Philadelphia for months. The day my mom got too sick for me to keep searching. By the time I finished, my voice was barely working. Dorian didn't move, didn't blink. He was staring at me like I had tilted his entire world off its axis. Finally, he walked forward, crouching beside the chair. He reached for Brutus's paw and turned it gently, revealing the small, pale patch of scar tissue I had mentioned. "I see it," he murmured. Then he lifted Brutus's chin and inspected the notch in his left ear. "And this." His hands were surprisingly gentle for a man who commanded violence. When he stood again, something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. But it wasn't aimed at me. "You're telling me someone stole your dog, beat him, trained him for violence, and then sold him to me disguised as a fighting line import for 200 grand. I nodded. "And now," Dorian continued, pacing slowly, "you're standing in my house telling me the man who sold him to me might still be out there. Still operating. Still hurting animals. Still profiting." He stopped, facing me fully now. "Why look for the truth after 7 years?" Quote. I stroked Brutus's head, feeling him relax under my touch, trusting me like he always had. That trust fueled something inside me, something strong and steady. "Because Brutus isn't the only one," I said. "If someone could take him, they've taken others. If he suffered, others have too. I need to know who did this. I need to know how to stop them." For the first time, Dorian didn't look like the Mafia boss everyone feared. He looked human. "You want answers," he said quietly. "I want justice," I corrected. "And I want it for him." Brutus nudged my hand at the sound of my voice, and Dorian's jaw tightened in a way that felt like a silent promise. Then you're not going back to cleaning floors, he said. From this moment forward, you work with Brutus only. Training, care, rehabilitation, no other duties. Triple pay. My breath caught. And there's more. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. If Brutus truly recognizes you, if everything you said is true, then someone in my world is lying to me, betraying me, and I don't tolerate betrayal. Quote, a cold shiver ran down my spine, not from fear of him, but from the truth settling between us. Whoever stole Brutus wasn't just a thief. They were part of something much bigger, something dangerous. I swallowed hard. Why are you helping me? Dorian studied me for a long moment. Because I've spent 3 years trying to break through that dog's walls, he said. And you did it in 30 seconds. Whatever connection you two share, I want to understand it. I want to fix what was done to him. Brutus shifted, laying both paws on my lap now, like he didn't want to be left out. Dorian's voice softened. Barely, but enough to make my heart trip for reasons I didn't want to name. And, he added, because the way he looks at you, I've never seen him trust anyone like that. I can't ignore that. Heat rose in my cheeks. I wasn't sure what to say. But then Dorian leaned closer, his gaze locked on mine like he was studying something he couldn't quite figure out. You walked into my world by accident, he said. But you might be the key to unraveling something very old, very dark, and very dangerous. My pulse pounded in my ears. And Issa, he added, his voice barely above a whisper, now that you're in, I'm not letting you walk away. Brutus barked once, sharp and protective, as if agreeing with him, and that was the moment I realized my life had just changed forever. The next few weeks felt like stepping into a different life. I no longer scrubbed floors or folded sheets. My entire job became Brutus, his training, his recovery, his emotions, his scars. Every morning before the sun rose, I walked into the East Wing, and he came running to me with a joy that nearly knocked me off my feet. He greeted me the way he used to when he was a puppy, pressing his huge head into my stomach like he wanted to crawl inside my heart and stay there. But I wasn't the only one watching. Almost every day at some point Dorian appeared. Sometimes he stood in the doorway with his hands in his pockets. Sometimes he walked right into the room and knelt beside Brutus as if he wanted to understand how a dog trained for violence could melt into gentleness at my touch. One morning, Dorian watched me as Brutus rolled onto his back for belly rubs. The tension in his shoulders looked different, less guarded, more unsure. You're teaching him to be soft, he said. His voice didn't accuse me. It questioned the idea itself. I'm teaching him he has a choice, I answered. Violence was forced on him, but gentleness is still inside him. He just needed someone he trusted to remind him. Dorian looked at me for a long moment, something shifting behind his dark eyes, something fragile and real. Show me how you do it, he said. At first I thought I misheard him. Mafia bosses don't ask for lessons. They give orders, but his eyes weren't cold like usual. They were open, curious, almost vulnerable. So I guided him. Start by relaxing your shoulders, I said softly. You're holding tension like you're ready for a fight. Quote, that's how I always stand, he said, trying to loosen his posture but failing. I stepped behind him and gently touched between his shoulder blades. His breath caught, but he didn't move away. Try again, I murmured. This time he relaxed, and the reaction was immediate. Brutus's tail flicked once, as if he could feel the difference. Now keep your hand loose, I explained. No fists. He reads fists as danger. Dorian lifted his hand slowly, unsure, like he was learning a new language. Brutus sniffed him cautiously. Then, unbelievably, he leaned forward and touched Dorian's fingers with his nose. Dorian froze. Then something broke open inside him. His lips parted in surprise, his expression softening in a way I never thought I'd see. He's never let me touch him voluntarily, he whispered. A warmth bloomed inside me. Not just pride, something deeper, something dangerous. Over the next few days, something unexpected happened. The more Brutus healed, the more Dorian changed. He watched every technique I used. He asked questions. He even tried practicing things on his own. though he pretended he didn't care whether he succeeded or not. And somehow, without noticing when it started, I began paying attention to him, too, to the tired shadows under his eyes, to the way he rubbed the bridge of his nose when he was thinking, to the quiet softness that surfaced only when he thought no one was watching. But the peace didn't last. One afternoon, I used my break to visit the business office. I told the assistant I needed to check my employee files, and he barely looked up. But I wasn't looking for contracts. I was looking for Brutus. It took an hour of scrolling through digital folders before I found the acquisition records. My stomach twisted as I read the name of the seller, Carson Webb. Dorian's director of security, the man Dorian trusted with his life. My fingers shook as I photographed the documents with my phone. The number on the file blurred through my rising anger. $200,000. For a dog he stole from a grieving teenager. For a life he had shattered without care. I was still shaking when I took Brutus outside later that night. I tried calming myself, but the rage kept rising. Brutus sensed it, pressing closer, leaning his weight against me as if to remind me he was still here. That was when I heard footsteps behind me. "You're thinking loud thoughts," Dorian said, his voice low. I turned. His eyes were on me, sharp and searching. "What did you find?" he asked. "Your breathing changed the moment I walked in." I hesitated. Telling the truth meant stepping deeper into his dangerous world, but hiding it meant staying powerless. So I told him. I told him about the acquisition files, the seller's name, the pictures I took, everything. Dorian didn't interrupt. He didn't blink. He listened with a stillness that vibrated with something dark and restrained. And when I finished, he stepped closer. Too close. Close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off him. "You investigated my security director," he said quietly. "You accessed files you weren't supposed to see. You dug into the life of a man who eliminates threats before they know they exist." "Yes," I said. His eyes narrowed with a dangerous mix of shock and something that felt like admiration. "That's either incredibly brave," he murmured, "or incredibly reckless." "It's necessary," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want Brutus's truth. I want the full story, and if your man stole him, there are others out there suffering too." He stared at me for so long I almost lost my nerve. Then something changed. His expression softened, not fully, but enough to let me breathe again. "You challenge everything I thought I understood," he said quietly. His hand lifted toward my face, then stopped halfway, like he wasn't sure he had the right to touch me. "You walked into my life by accident," he whispered. "But now I can't imagine it without you." My heart slammed against my ribs. I felt pulled toward him like gravity itself had shifted. "And Issa," he said, his voice even lower now, "you're making me want things I swore I could never have." My breath caught. "Like what?" I whispered. He didn't answer with words. He answered by closing the distance between us, his hand sliding to my waist, his forehead touching mine with a tenderness I didn't expect from a man like him. When his lips met mine, it felt like everything inside me broke open. Every fear, every buried grief, every part of me that had forgotten what it felt like to be wanted. The kiss was soft at first, then hungry, then deep. The kind of kiss that changed everything. And with Brutus lying at our feet like a silent witness, Dorian Kane, the untouchable Mafia boss, kissed me like he needed me to breathe. But just as my heart began to settle into the moment, a cold truth hit me. If Carson had stolen Brutus, he would do anything to keep his secrets buried. And falling for Dorian meant stepping onto a path where love, danger, and betrayal were all tangled together. A path where someone like me didn't always survive. The plan to catch Carson came together faster than I expected, but slower than my heart could handle. Every night, Dorian and I sat in his office with files spread everywhere, while Brutus slept at our feet, breathing slow and steady. Those moments felt strange and intimate, like we were building something real in the middle of a world built on danger. But beneath everything, one truth pulsed like a warning. Carson stole my dog, Carson beat him, Carson sold him, and Carson was still here. Dorian's strongest, most trusted man had betrayed him in the darkest way possible. And the moment Dorian accepted that truth, something in him hardened in a way I had never seen before. "We'll set a trap," he said one night, "but it won't be guns or threats. We'll use the one thing Carson can't hide from." "Brutus," I whispered. Dorian nodded slowly. "When he sees the dog recognizes you, panic will give him away, and panic makes men sloppy." 2 days later, the plan unfolded inside a warehouse Carson had chosen. Dorian's men were hidden in shadows. I wore a tailored suit and my hair pulled back, pretending to be a buyer named Helena Cross. Quote, "But the hardest part, the part that made my stomach twist into knots, was walking forward with Brutus at my side, knowing Carson was only steps away. At first, Carson didn't look at me. His eyes went straight to Brutus with a greedy spark that chilled my blood. "That's a magnificent dog," he said. "Perfect build. Perfect posture." "Don't get too close," I said, because part of the plan required me to stay calm. But Brutus told the truth before I could. The moment Carson reached toward him, Brutus's entire body went tense. His lips lifted into a silent snarl I had never seen him give anyone else. He remembered. Even after 7 years, he remembered the man who stole him. Carson jerked his hand back, startled. "That's odd." Then I dropped the disguise. I dropped the accent. I dropped every mask I had been wearing. "He reacts like that to people who hurt him," I said quietly. "People who stole him as a puppy. People who sold him for money." Carson froze. His eyes flicked over my face with growing horror. "You," he whispered. "You're that girl, the one from South Philly." Quote. I nodded, my voice shaking with anger and grief I had held for too long. "And this is my dog." Before Carson could respond, Dorian stepped out from behind a support beam. "No more lies," he said. "Confess, or I bury you." Carson tried reaching for a weapon he didn't get the chance to grab. Dorian's men moved faster than I could blink, surrounding him. What followed wasn't violence. It was extraction, a confession. On camera, every detail, every stolen animal, every sale, every fight ring, every lie. It took over an hour. By the end, Carson wasn't even pretending anymore. His voice shook, his hands trembled, and when agents stepped forward to arrest him, he didn't look at them. He looked at me. "I didn't think he'd survive," Carson muttered. "That dog was supposed to be dead." Brutus growled, low and cold, and it took everything in me not to fall apart. What happened next didn't feel real. Carson was gone. Federal agents took over the evidence. Dorian's empire shook, but it didn't crumble. Instead, something new formed. Something gentler. Something hopeful. Dorian and I grew closer in the weeks that followed. Not through passion, though that came too, but through honest grief and fragile healing. We talked. We fought. We learned each other's scars. One afternoon, after a long day of working with Brutus, I found Dorian waiting for me in the East Wing. His posture was different, less guarded, less cold. "I've been thinking," he said. I sat beside him on the floor, my back against the wall. Brutus settled between us with a long sigh. "About what?" I asked. "About building something better than the life I have." His voice was soft. Something cleaner. Something real. Something I could be proud of. I turned to him. "What does that look like?" He held my gaze for a long moment. "A sanctuary," he said. "For dogs like Brutus. For animals like the ones Carson took. For the ones still out there." My breath caught. "You want to build a rehabilitation center?" "With you," he said. "If you'll help me." I didn't speak right away. My heart was pounding too hard. The man who once built an empire on fear was now offering to build something good. With me. "Yes," I whispered. "I want that too." He reached out and took my hand, not like a mafia boss claiming something, like a man asking for a future. 3 months later, Redemption Sanctuary opened. 20 acres of healing. A staff who believed. Veterinarians, trainers, volunteers. And Brutus, the heart of it all. I walked through the main yard with Dorian beside me. The sunset painted the sky gold. Brutus ran ahead with Hope, a shepherd rescued from a fight ring, both of them free in ways they never had been before. "You did this," Dorian said softly. "No," I corrected. "We did." He slipped an arm around my waist, pulling me gently against him. "You changed me," he murmured. "You made me want to be someone better." I rested my head on his shoulder. "You chose that yourself. I just showed you that you could." He kissed me then, slow, certain, full of gratitude and love, the kind of kiss that made every scar worth surviving. Brutus barked, as if reminding us he was still there. We laughed and pulled him between us, both of us resting our hands on him while he leaned against our legs. "A family. Unlikely, unplanned, but real," Dorian whispered. "I love you, Issa." My eyes stung with tears. "I love you too," I said, "and I love him and this place. And the future we're building." Brutus nudged our hands together and settled at our feet, his body relaxed, his heart finally safe. And that was when I knew. Healing wasn't a miracle. It was a choice, a stubborn, hopeful choice we made every single day. And together, we chose it.